Greetings, my name is Jim Lindsay. This is a CIS lesson over presentation skills. Let's get started. In this lesson, we'll cover the following. We'll look at the value of presentation skills and technology's role in presentations pretty briefly, and then we'll go into how-to advice to help you learn some things to make better presentations using technology. There are 10 how-to pieces of advice that I will impart to you. So again, value of presentation skills and technology's role pretty briefly, and then 10 bits of advice on how to incorporate technology effectively. All right, first let's look at why presentation skills are so important. And if we were in a classroom environment, we would spend a good deal of time talking about this. I would encourage you to think about what you think your profession is going to be. Are you going to be a financial advisor? Are you going to be an accountant? Are you going to be a teacher? Are you going to be a manager of some sort? Are you going to be an information technology professional? And in any of those roles, you're going to, if you think about it, you're basically going to come to the conclusion that having good presentation skills is going to be a very desirable and a feather in your cap. Not having good presentation skills is definitely going to be an impediment in the long run for your career. And so I want you to think about this. And the whole reason we're talking about presentation skills in general is because, and not specifically just technology, is because this is a very important trait which recruiters look for as they look at candidates for jobs. And so when you guys graduate from Western Kentucky University and you get into the job market, you need to demonstrate that you have good written communication skills, good verbal communication skills, that you can put those together and make presentations, and it's just gonna, you need it. When you look at data from employers, and we do this on a very regular basis, almost more than once a year, we're looking at, what our business is looking for in college graduates, and communication skills, presentation skills, those are things that are always towards the top of the list. So that's why this is so critical that we talk about it. So important that you learn how to do it well. Now there are communication classes at Western Kentucky University that are dedicated to this, and this obviously is a short presentation. It's not going to substitute for an entire course, but if you've taken one of those courses, what you're hearing here should make total sense to you. If you haven't taken it, then hopefully this is going to at least jumpstart your ability to improve presentations right away. And as you go into those sorts of courses, be aware of some things that will help you excel in those courses faster. So that's why we're talking about this. Now, there are different types of presentations. You have informal all the way up to formal, and obviously your informal presentations would be things like you see a picture on the left of a couple of people in a conference room talking about perhaps about strategy. Let's say there's a project that they're working on together. They're talking about how can we attack this problem and solve it as well as possible. The guy standing at the whiteboard with the marker, he happens to be presenting his views at that time. And again, this is in an informal setting. He probably knows these other fellows in the room. He worked with them most likely, and so it's a comfortable group, but at the same time he has to have those presentation skills in order to share and articulate his thoughts and why he thinks these particular strategies or approaches are going to be important. If you don't have those presentation skills, you could have the best idea in the room, but if you can't share it, then your organization's not going to benefit because you basically couldn't communicate it to the rest of the group. So again, informal groups are very common. You'll do that all the time. Over on the right, you have a more formal setting. You have a speaker talking to a large group of people. That's not a huge group, but that would be a little bit more stressful perhaps than the situation on the left, because on the right he has a projector. He's sharing some thoughts from slides of some sort, and he's probably trying to inform those people or convince those people to take some course of action. He's trying to influence them in some way, and that's probably a more a less familiar group than you would experience on the left side of the screen. So there are different types of presentations. In any of those situations, you might find that you would use technology. Not always. As you can see, the guy on the left, he has a whiteboard and a marker. Or you may have nothing. Or you may have a chalkboard and chalk. Or you may have a butcher pad and a marker that you write on paper for brainstorming situations. But in informal to formal settings, you will run into technology. And technology can be helpful to you, or it can hurt you. Technology has not always been so readily available, and back when I was in college, when we took our communications courses, I mean, you would go up there with just basically note cards, and you would make presentations. You may write on a chalkboard. We didn't even have whiteboards at that point. If you wanted posters, you would make those on poster board, and the whole coming about of a presentation sort of software like PowerPoint, it's been a big change in the presentation world, and not all of it is good, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But you can have, in addition to yourself, things like computers and computer projectors and things like that to help you share thoughts with a crowd. This is the same picture you saw a second ago, and this gentleman is using images and bullet comments to hopefully convince his audience of the points that he's trying to make. Now, we want to really make sure you hear that technology can be a blessing and it can be a curse. And one of the terms we like to use in our department anyway is that it's very possible if you have poorly constructed PowerPoint presentations, if you're going to use those at all, if you have a poorly constructed one, that you can just really bore your audience. You can ruin a presentation, and we call it death by PowerPoint. Here, for example, is a gentleman giving a talk at a conference, and if you look closely at that picture, you'll see that his slide it's just full of words. He has lots of complicated acronyms on there, and he has a side screen to his left where basically he can see that what he's talking to them about, and he's talking to his crowd. He's talking to this crowd about all these different topics, but instead of having something like an engaging image up there, he has just the words. And as a result of that, your audience typically will get really bored, tired, and as you can see in this case, this gentleman has fallen asleep at the presentation. So try not to do this. That sort of document that you saw in the preceding slide, this one right here with all the words on it, we refer to those as slideguments because it looks like a document. It's so easy as you use presentation software, not just PowerPoint but all the others as well, to create just essentially a document that's going to be projected up on the wall. So do not make slideguments is our advice. If you're going to use presentation software like PowerPoint, don't make slideguments. And to finish this point about technology's role, please see the following. You see that, as the woman in the picture shows, people can read, and people can listen, but they typically can't do both of them at the same time and not retain anything. I'm sure you've been to presentations where the presenter will basically present a slide like the slidegumment I showed you a moment ago, and then just start to talk. And they'll be talking about all the important facets of the things presented on this document, and you're trying to read it and listen, and you end up not getting a whole lot from it. So if you're going to put some text up on a screen, on a presentation slide, give your audience an opportunity to read it before you just automatically launch into an explanation of what the text is about, because they will typically not get a lot from the presentation if you talk over the slide and don't give them an opportunity to read it. And the last point in this technology's role is this: you as the speaker are the most important part of the presentation. People came to the presentation to hear you. They didn't come to see a PowerPoint slide or a whiteboard. They came to hear what you have to say. And so with that in mind, how can you create really good presentations? How can you prepare yourself so that when you get in front of a crowd, you can do a good job? That's what we're going to talk about for the remainder of the presentation. We have 10 pieces of advice to share with you, and let's go ahead and get to those. The first bit of advice is something that I learned in the Army, and pretty much what they told us in the Army was that when you're going to give a presentation, tell the crowd what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. And as you can see from the graphic here, you're going to have an opening, the body, and the conclusion. In the opening, you say, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. In the body, you tell them what you want them to know. In the conclusion, you summarize what you just talked about. So have these three main parts to your presentation, and by having this sort of organization to your presentation, you're going to communicate pretty effectively what it is you're trying to whatever you want to talk about. And if you look at this, in order to do this effectively, you're gonna have to know in advance what it is you're trying to share with the audience. So just trying to make presentations on the fly is typically really difficult because you don't end up sharing what you want to share, then sharing it, and then giving a conclusion. You end up kind of rambling. That's the first point. The second bit of advice is this: make your path very clear. What you're supposed to see here when you look at these pictures is a road and a road, or basically you see the road ahead, you see a map. That's supposed to be a graphic of a map. And so your audience knows as the presentation starts, what are you going to talk about? And I tried to do that with this particular presentation. I told you from the very beginning, hey, we're going to talk about the importance of presentation skills and then technology's role briefly, and then we're going to get into 10 points. And that's and that's where we are right now. By letting your audience know what you're going to talk about, they can keep they basically keep track in their head where you are in the presentation. Like, you guys know I'm at the second point in the 10 tips, and there's just a few more, the 8 more to give, and then we're done. And so with that in mind, you can mentally keep track. And so this is the second point. The third point is that you can use something that we call in the CIS department a Zen philosophy. And the enhanced PowerPoint presentation project that I'll have you complete really brings this point home. With the Zen philosophy of presentations, everything is very image based. The least amount of text possible on slides. If you've ever seen Picha Kucha presentations, or if you've ever watched TED Talks, they're all really in sync with the Zen philosophy. And so as opposed to giving people words to read on slides, you pop up very interesting or provocative images which support whatever the thing you're talking about, and then you discuss it. And so as it should be, the slide behind you or the slide next to you is it's a support mechanism which reinforces or supports whatever it is you're trying to communicate to the audience. And so Zen is one technique to use technology effectively. All right, our next point, basically our fourth point here, is that you need to practice. And if you're going to make a presentation, rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. And you can see from the picture on the left, the guy is standing in front of a mirror. Looks like he's in a bathroom at that point, rehearsing his speech. So let's say he's at a conference and he's about to go before a crowd. Would this seem kind of ridiculous if you walked in the bathroom and a guy's sitting there practicing his speech? Well, maybe, but if he has a really good presentation, it's probably worth it. You can do this rehearsing in front of a mirror at your own home, in a dormitory. The value of rehearsing in front of a mirror is that you see your mannerisms, you see your gestures, you see your facial expressions. You can see whether you're actually looking at the crowd or if you're looking down at your notes or pad of paper. And so that's a great way to rehearse. You can also video record yourself. You can, as the gentleman in the picture on the right, you can record it, with a video camera or just with audio, and then listen to it in playback. You'll hear yourself saying you'll hear yourself stumbling, you'll hear yourself saying things that maybe sound good on paper, but in a verbal conversation they're sort of clumsy. And so through this rehearsal, you can greatly enhance the effect of the presentation. So practice, practice, practice. Now, if you're like most people, you're probably going to experience some anxiety as you get ready to make a presentation. Perhaps you're not, and if you're not, then good for you. You're one of the few people that does not get nervous at the basically in the challenge of talking to a bunch of people. When I'm in front of my classes, I don't get nervous at all. But when I go to a conference, I've addressed some rooms of maybe 100 to 150 people. I get nervous. I mean, my stomach hurts. It's like when I was a little kid, and we used to do we had speech competitions in 4-H. One of the things I remember from like 4th and 5th grade, and man, it was just as it got to be your time to talk, is like, oh man, I'm going to puke, and so that doesn't affect me so much anymore when I'm at work, because I've gotten so used to my environment in our classrooms. But when I go to other places and bigger venues, it hits me. And so how can you mitigate or minimize the amount of anxiety that you feel? Well, you can rehearse, like we've already talked about. You can be prepared. Also, you can be as physically ready as possible. And so in these pictures that you're looking at, there's a picture of people exercising. You have water that you would definitely want to bring to a presentation, because as you're giving a presentation, your throat, especially if you're stressed, may start to your throat may get dry, and so you have water that you can take a drink of and wet your throat. Water also has another really wonderful there's a wonderful use of water while you're giving a presentation. If you get to a point where you want to really bring something home, you want to emphasize something big time, what you do is you make your super important point. I have a glass of water right here next to me. I'm going to take my glass of water. So I'm making my super important point, and I just made the most important point of the presentation, and now I'm going to stop and take a drink of water. And I know you couldn't see that, but I just took a drink of water. But during that pause, you were sitting there thinking about what I just said. And so that power of the pause can be greatly enhanced by just that natural act of taking a sip of water, as well as wetting your throat, and use that. So how do you deal with that anxiety? Rehearsal is one of the best things you can do, but on top of that, being physically relaxed as you approach the podium, that really, really helps. Here's a very quick point. Basically, don't read your speech. You can see there's a gentleman with a script basically right in front of him, and those are horrible presentations. If you've ever had to sit through those sorts of presentations where the person just reads something on a piece of paper, that's bad enough. Or if they read to you what's on a PowerPoint slide, that's even worse. So don't do that. Don't read your speech to people. They can read for themselves. honor their time. If you're going to give a presentation, tell them something that's not on the screen in front of them, or at least look at their eyes while you're making that presentation. That's going to keep their attention, because if you're not looking at people in the face, they're going to get bored and start to doze off. All right, we're almost to the end here. We have just a few more points. Remember to gesture is what we want to communicate here. And so you have Jeff Foxworthy. He's a comedian that you might recognize. There are pictures of him on the left, and you can see from these different pictures, he's giving like a thumbs up and a thumbs down. He's doing like what? Those sorts of gestures. Those sorts of hand movements and body movements and facial expressions, those communicate a tremendous amount to your audience. You have the woman on the right. That's the alley lady from The Biggest Loser show, and she's also in soap operas. She's kind of a hand talker. If you've ever seen her on television, as she's very animated, and as she talks to people, she uses her hands as she talks. And so that can be, if you overdo it, it can be a bit of a distraction. But if you incorporate it at an appropriate level, it really helps people stay focused. And again, how do you know which is how much is too much and how much is enough? Well, rehearse in front of a mirror, rehearse in front of a video camera, rehearse in front of your friends or your family if you can convince them to watch it. And in doing so, you're going to come up with a pretty good idea of how those gestures can be helpful to you as you present things. If there's a public address system, available, I encourage you to use it. If you're in a big room like one of our CIS classrooms is huge, and if you're on the back row of that classroom, it can be really difficult to hear the presenter. And no matter how loud you talk, it can still be hard to hear the person at the front of the room. So if there's a public address system or a microphone system, take advantage of that. Go into a presentation, as part of your rehearsal process. If you can get to the room where you're going to make your speech and look at it beforehand, that's really helpful, because then you can see how big is this place going to be where I'm talking to people. Do I need to use a microphone? Is a microphone available? All those sorts of considerations can be thought about, so when you show up on the day of the presentation, that anxiety level can be at a minimum, because you've already kind of scoped out and did some recon of the room that you're going to be talking in. And then practice with that microphone, that public address system, if you can. Turn it on and see if you walk around the room, do you get feedback at certain points in the room? Like in our CIS classroom, if you wear our wireless mic and you walk out in front of the speakers, a lot of the times you'll get like that big feedback sound. You need to know that, so what parts of the room are safe to walk in and which parts of the room are not safe to walk in. That sorts of stuff. So public address systems, take advantage of those if you can. In that sort of venue, you'll see, like in this picture, this gentleman is behind a lectern or behind a podium with a still microphone. So he wouldn't be in a situation where he can really walk around the room very well, because in order for that microphone to project his voice effectively, he needs to be back behind the microphone. But in our classroom, if you have that wireless mic, you can walk around. You have that freedom to, as you gesture or act things out, or whatever you're going to be doing, the microphone can just come with you. So take advantage of the public address system if you can, and it can be really helpful in getting your voice just projected back to people so they can actually hear you. Our last 2 points are these: keep your slides simple, KYSS. You see on the left a presentation slide used by Steve Jobs, who of course has passed away. He was the CEO of Apple, but he was a really good speaker. And when he would do press releases and basically product releases of things for Apple, he was kind of known for having these very Zen-like slides where, there's just a picture of one thing, like maybe the iPhone up there or a picture of the iPad, but on the right you have a picture of Bill Gates from Microsoft, and he has a very wordy slide kind of slide up there, like all those different words, and that's too much text. And so be striving to have presentation slides that look like something Steve Jobs is using over on the left. Have mainly images. If you can have no words at all, it's even better. So keep your slides simple. Strive for that Zen sort of philosophy. And lastly, try to have fun. And as the slide here says, engage your audience, look at them, try and understand whether they're getting what you're saying or not. You can see it in a person's face. If you're talking to a crowd and you're trying to explain something, if people look confused, they're not getting it. And so you can maybe attack whatever you're trying to explain to them in some other way, or you can ask them questions, and then you can attack whatever the point of confusion is. Smile, as we've already talked about, gesture, and move about the room if you can. Doing all those things is going to keep your audience more interested in what you're talking about. So that's our final point. So here are the things we've talked about, the value of presentation skills and technology's role. And then we went through 10 pieces of advice. I have a document for you. If you look at this document, this is a short document, it's 8 pages, and it explains basically a bunch of the topics in detail that I presented to you. But read this document. This directly supports all the things that we've just talked about. And so let me go back to the presentation. So as you consider these things we've talked about, read that document. I think it will help you better use technology and make better presentations. Again, it's a really important skill to have. Thank you for your time and attention. Have a great day.